On January 17th, 2025, the Federal Trade Commission posted a press release on its website saying that due to their referral, the Department of Justice of the United States had gone after Genshin Impact's developer. The lawsuit title is crazy in itself. The United States versus Cognosphere, the parent company of Genshin Impact. I never thought I'd see that sentence in my life. They allege that Genshin Impact has deceived children, teens, and other players into spending hundreds of dollars on prizes they stood little chance of winning, as well as having a blatant disrespect towards children's privacy rights, and that's barely scraping the surface, guys. Look, this came out of nowhere. It caught everyone by surprise. But it turns out that the FTC has been working on this investigation for years now, as early as 2022. What was even more shocking to many is that instead of countersuing, Genshin Impact's developer didn't. They ended up settling, paying over $20 million and having to change multiple aspects of their monetization in-game. Additionally, every single news outlet at this point has talked about this, okay? This game is such a phenomenon that yes, whenever something like this happens, it does impact the game industry as a whole. The lawsuit itself that was filed by the FTC contains a lot of interesting little surprises. Like how some characters are mentioned by name or how SS Sniper Wolf makes a fucking appearance. The community reaction, though, resulted in an implosion of people completely fighting each other on different opinions. The impact that this lawsuit has had has already been huge, but it stands to be even bigger in the future, so we have to talk about it. Let's do this. If you weren't born yesterday and have played video games for like the last 10 years at least, you know the term microtransactions and loot boxes. You couldn't have avoided them, even if you wanted to. The term loot box has gotten so big that you can find it on the website of the UK Parliament or on an Australian government website. There's a lot of controversy surrounding these game mechanics because for many, they are very similar to what you'd find in a casino, except this is marketed to all ages. Concern kept growing as parents started to notice that the games their children were playing had a lot of gambling mechanics incorporated into them. This all somewhat culminated into the very infamous moment in which the UK brought forth some gaming executives and questioned them about their loot box mechanics, with this EA executive saying that they're not loot boxes, they're just surprise mechanics.
Well, first, we don't call them loot boxes. I think that was...
Whatever term you wish to apply to them, do you consider them ethical?
So what we look at as surprise mechanics.
You know, what's funny to me is that these online casinos, right? They don't call themselves casinos. They call themselves gaming providers, right? Like, oh my God, hey, you make slot machines, right? No, I make games. I am a game developer. This sounds like the same exact mental gymnastics. This was back in 2019, and people thought that finally this gambling plague would leave their games alone, but unfortunately, nothing really happened. One of the most infamous companies in all this, of course, is EA Games. They make so much money from microtransactions. They call that extra content. In 2024, they made $4.4 billion from microtransactions, and half of it came from FIFA's Ultimate Team mode. Or sorry, EAFC 24, because they lost the FIFA trademark. The premise is simple. You build your own team to play against players. But the way you get the best players is by opening packs and relying fully on luck to get the ones that you want. In 2020, the Dutch court ruled that EA Games has 1 week to make changes to how this mechanic works, otherwise they would fine them 500,000 euros a week, up to 10 million euros, until they do. Many people saw this as a victory, but EA said, no, we're not going to do that. In fact, we're going to appeal. And 2 years later, that fine got cancelled. Nothing's really changed in that regard. Look, one thing was for certain by that point, loot boxes were becoming more and more taboo. As companies became increasingly fearful of costly regulation, they started looking at other monetization mechanics and found inspiration in Fortnite's item shop. You'd get a bunch of rare items, you could buy them for points, and if you didn't buy them, then they disappeared and you would never know if you could get them again. Fortnite found huge profitability with this business model as well as their battle pass, and other companies found success with this business model too. Not all of them though, okay? Not all of them. However, on the other side of the planet, you still had many game companies using a monetization system similar to loot boxes, and it was getting very profitable. They were called gacha games. There are so many gacha games out there, most of them on mobile, and many of them not even being able to survive for more than a few years before being, well, deleted. You'll always find new releases and you'll always hear news of old games shutting down. But where the hell did they come from? Well, it's from where all the other good things come from too. Japan. It originated from the term gachapon, which are these machines here. Let's take the example of this car gachapon machine where you put 300 yen and you're hoping to get your favorite car out of these 5 different cars. The idea here is that you're gambling, but you're gambling on preference, not on money. After putting your money in this machine, you're receiving a car, whether you like it or not. It's just that you might not be getting the one that you want. And that's exactly how gacha games work as well. Wikipedia takes this even further and says that games such as Magic the Gathering are actually a type of gacha. This would make Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, all those games gacha as well, even though no one really refers to them that way. Now when you hear gacha, you're thinking of a game, free to play, most likely on mobile, that's either from China, Korea, or Japan. And this is where Genshin Impact came in on September 28th, 2020. Gacha before Genshin was very niche. It was also mostly on mobile. Genshin changed that by not only making it available on PC, but on PS4 as well. More importantly, it was appealing to the mainstream audience and not to a niche audience. So if you liked open world games, it was enough for you to try Genshin. But the thing is, I don't think people quite understand just how much money Genshin makes. Half of its revenue comes from its home country, China. But it's estimated that by 2025, it'll be on track to hit $10 billion in total since release. Some of you watching might be thinking, oh, wait a second, that's not really a lot of money. Well, I don't really blame you. The government throws $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion like it's $5 in your pocket from time to time, right? So here's a fun little comparison. Ever since Grand Theft Auto 5 released, if you include all their copies sold and all the revenue generated from GTA Online, they've made $8.5 billion. Do you understand now? Like, are we on the same page? Genshin Impact in 5 years has made more than Grand Theft Auto 5 in over a decade. That's how profitable gacha can be for the top companies. For the first 6 months of 2024, Genshin Impact stayed their top earner, with Honkai Star Rail, another game of theirs, being very close second. So it shows that even though gacha games have low life expectancy, Genshin was still holding on quite well. The Federal Trade Commission, of course, will keep track of these things. They're constantly looking at the top earners in app stores, whether it be Apple's or Google's. And their goal as an organization is to stand up for the American consumer when they're not being bribed, of course. The first thing you see on their website is COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, and they were going to use this as a basis to actually file a complaint against Genshin Impact's developer. Which brings us here. United States of America versus Cognosphere. Now you might be wondering, why Cognosphere? Why not HOYOVERSE? That's the game's company. No? Well, it's complicated. Domestically in China, they're still known as MiHoYo. Globally, for partnerships, they're HOYOVERSE. But the parent company that oversees finances and transactions is Cognosphere, based in Singapore just like HOYOVERSE. But for sake of clarity, I'll just say HOYOVERSE from now on. This case is split into 2 major parts. The first part focusing on the Children's Privacy Protection Act, and the second part focusing on the monetization mechanics used by Genshin Impact. But the thing they start off with, and I find this really funny, they try to explain why Genshin is directed to children under 13, right? They make it a point. Look at this. They argue that Paimon, right, your companion throughout the whole game, and the mascot of the game in the App Store is directed towards children. Some people will definitely agree with this, some others won't. But I can tell you right now, a lot of adults find Paimon annoying, so maybe they're onto something here. I don't know. I'm not so sure here, but I just find it so funny. But this for me is where it gets hilarious, okay? They show you an ad where it says Cute Force, where you see 3 characters you can play in the game: Diona, Chi-Chi, and Klee. This to them is similar to children's art, and that these promotional materials are appealing to children because they emphasize the childlike qualities of these heroes. Look, bro, I don't know who's got to tell him, but in the gacha sphere, this ad would appeal more to certain adults than children, okay? But that's all I'll say on the matter, okay? Let's keep going. They allege that HOYOVERSE intentionally hired influencers that have an audience of children to advertise the game to. For example, many of these paid influencers won or were finalists for categories related to gaming and online media at the Nickelodeon's Kids' Choice Awards. Some of them were big content creators for Minecraft or Roblox. And they also alleged that some internal planning documents used by HOYOVERSE made note of whether hired influencers were known for producing Minecraft or Roblox-related content. To strengthen this argument, they mention a hide-and-seek minigame that happens once a year in Genshin Impact by the name of Windtrace, and how they hired an influencer by the name of It's Funny to play it on their YouTube channel. You know what? I mean, this does look like Cocomelon, but in Roblox. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. It's the same kind of thumbnail. It does look like a kid's channel. But it's important to note here that there was nothing mentioning any of the gacha mechanics, right? It was just a bunch of friends playing together like you would watch C-nanners playing Prop Hunt, right? Are you guys old enough to understand this reference? God, I hope so. But these things were enough for the FTC to determine that Genshin Impact is directed to children within the meaning of the COPPA rule. Their biggest issue relating to COPPA was HOYOVERSE collecting personal information from children without obtaining parental consent. They outline how here. It's through their social network. So if you didn't know, HOYOVERSE has a social network called HOYOLAB where you can share things from all their different games, find resources, and also do a daily check-in that gives you rewards. The FTC argues that in many instances, HOYOVERSE has become aware that HOYOLAB users are children. Some users have stated or indicated in communications reviewed by HOYOVERSE that they were under 13 years old, for example, in social media postings on HOYOLAB or in posted photographs, videos, or audio files containing the child's image or voice from which it was apparent that the user was a child. HOYOVERSE has in some instances taken limited and insufficient corrective steps when it has discovered a post by a child, such as removing the post in question and muting the user from posting on the HOYOLAB social network, but without deleting or seeking verifiable parental consent for the use or disclosure of other personal information of the child already collected. So this is how they argue that despite them knowing that they had children on their website, they took no steps and therefore collected their personal information with no issues on their end. And you know what? The FTC is not wrong at all here. It took me less than 5 minutes to find a minor posting their cosplay on HOYOLAB. I'm not going to show the post itself or the person's username, but all you got to know is it says from a minor, okay? It's in the title and it has over 400 likes, which is viral for HOYOLAB. Now don't get this twisted. It doesn't mean that minors shouldn't be having fun cosplaying their favorite characters, but the entire point of COPPA is for them to have protection while doing it. And if HOYOVERSE doesn't acknowledge that they're on their platform, then what's stopping someone from following them, interacting with them, and maybe even messaging them harmful things? Nothing. There are no protections in place. The FTC then reveals that the investigation into Genshin Impact has been going on for a while, and when HOYOVERSE actually became aware of it in December 2022, they sneakily changed a little section in their privacy policy, saying our services are not marketed to or intended for children. But for the FTC, that means nothing because in their opinion, HOYOVERSE has not sought to collect parental consent at any point in time. And then this is where things get interesting. We're talking about monetization, but not just in regards to children, but also in regards to something the FTC calls dark patterns. In this case, the FTC says that HOYOVERSE used confusing systems of virtual currency exchanged for loot boxes and deceived people about the low odds of desirable prizes to trick players into spending much more than they meant, making it a dark pattern. So in Genshin Impact, in order to pull for a limited 5-star character, you need a currency called Intertwined Fates. One fate means one pull. To get fates, you need to buy them with primogems. One fate equals 160 primogems. You can earn primogems in-game, but if you want to spend money, you buy Genesis crystals. You can then use the Genesis crystals to convert them to primogems to then use the primogems to buy the fates. But when you buy the Genesis crystals, you're not told how much they equal in terms of pulls. You have to do math. You have to unfortunately use your brain, take out the calculator, and calculate how much does this mean? If I spend $100, how many pulls do I realistically get? You don't have a straightforward answer in-game, and this is why the FTC is alleging that this is a dark pattern strategy. Additionally, they say that on banners, you see the words probability increased. You also see things like huge drop rate boost on marketing material, which is another dark pattern because it's deceiving. There's no drop rate boost. It's the same thing on every banner, except this one's limited for 20 days. This leads us to the next part, in which the FTC says that HOYOVERSE had hired influencers specifically to show off these gambling mechanics to make them fun for children. This is when I would encounter a name I never thought I'd see in 2025, which is SS Sniper Wolf. The FTC says that in May 2021, HOYOVERSE hired her and paid her more than $100,000 to record 2 videos promoting Genshin Impact, building upon their narrative that this is a 2-time winner of the Nickelodeon's Kids' Choice Awards in the favored gamer category, so her audience has a lot of kids watching. Now here's where it gets really tricky. She was pulling for characters, right? Typically, if you do a 10 pull, you'll always see a purple light if you don't win a 5-star because you're guaranteed to get a 4-star every 10 pulls. If you were to pull for a 5-star, you see a golden light. This is how you know that, oh my god, I just got a 5-star. In Sniper Wolf's video, it's purple, okay? This means that it's a 4-star. There is no, it's impossible that a 5-star is in there, and yet Guys, I'm telling you, you will not believe what happens when she gets to the final pull. Okay, first off, remember, we pulled 10 wishes. Okay, you cannot pull more than 10. You cannot pull less except for one at a time, right? And yet, all of a sudden you see 11 and then 12. And oh, look, this is a 5-star in a purple pull. Wow. Wow, who would have ever thought, dude? Wow, your RNG is really good, dude. It's so good that it defied game mechanics and is as crazy as someone getting a rare in a CSGO case and it turning out to be a skin worth 2 cents. You know, this is how crazy this is, just so you understand. The FTC alleges here that HOYOVERSE are complicit because they got to review this video before it was published since they were paying her to do it, and they still approved this. You cannot wish for more than 10 times at the same time, and yet here you saw 12, okay, that was already misleading, and you see a 5-star character appear when the highest one was supposed to be 4 stars. Another dark pattern. Look, part of the reason why many Genshin fans were shocked to find this lawsuit was because when it comes to their gacha mechanics, Genshin are very honest with their odds. You have this massive array of paragraphs that tell you exactly what to expect when you pull and the probability. I saw many people arguing this, saying, dude, who doesn't read this? Like, you have to be an idiot to not read the odds. And yet, the FTC is alleging that these odds are misleading. Look, when you get a 5-star character, you have a coin flip that plays in the background. If you win the coin flip, you get the character that you want, the limited character. If you lose it, you get a character that no one wants, someone from the standard pool. When Genshin Impact says that the base probability of winning a 5-star character is 0.6%, they're being misleading. So what the FTC says is that it should be 0.3%, a 3 in 1,000 chance to get the character that's actually on the limited banner, which is what people are actually pulling for, right? Realistically, no one's pulling for their 6th Diluc or Chi-Chi, right? All these things added up make up this case. The FTC believes that through Genshin Impact, HOYOVERSE has failed to protect children's data, has failed to get parental consent, has used dark patterns in its monetization mechanics, and that they have made a conscious effort targeting children in their marketing campaigns. Very shortly after, the community on Twitter caught wind of this, and well, a lot of them had different things to say. PC Gamer published this article saying the FTC says Genshin Impact deceived children, teens, and other players into spending hundreds of dollars on prizes they stood little chance of winning. This then led into the biggest tweet of this entire shitstorm, which was made by Doro44, a well-renowned Genshin content creator. Here's what he said. Not to defend the multi-billion-dollar company, but aren't the gacha mechanics explained in game? If you're allowing your kids to spend your money in a gacha game, then that's just bad parenting. I'm not sorry. But I will say implementing more protective measures so that kids don't go spending money they shouldn't isn't a bad thing. So obviously, as you can tell from the amount of comments, Doro received quite a bit of controversy. People were very divided on this. And while many also tended to agree with him, there was a lot of chaos. What I will say, though, is that PC Gamer knew exactly what they were doing here, okay? This title doesn't really sum up the entire case very well. There would have been way less chaos if they just said, FTC sues Genshin Impact over Child Safety Protection Act. Like, that's completely different than what they're saying here. The damage was done, though. This tweet was the ground zero for what erupted on Twitter. This meme right here was being passed around a lot, right? Like, if someone felt that you were siding with HOYOVERSE over the FTC, leave alone the multi-million-dollar company. Another content creator siding with Doro was Mr. Pokey, saying to people that are shitting on Doro, it's not a matter of whether the parents are aware that these are gacha games, but how the hell are your kids getting access to your credit cards? If my mom found out I swiped her credit card when I'm 12, I'd be beaten beyond recognition. Implying that in this case, the consumer needs to face responsibility, not just the company. With Doro thanking him for sharing his same opinion. On the other hand, you had Braxophone, a well-known guide maker in the Genshin community, saying this to Doro's tweet. It's parents' job to parent kids, but there's no justifiable reason for gacha to exist in the first place other than to disguise gambling as a fun game. We should not normalize gambling up to $300 every 3 weeks for game content, and especially not to children. Gacha is predatory. He then goes on to say that the only reason he plays gacha games is because they're the only live service games that are anime-based that are constantly updated. Bear in mind, this is someone who makes their entire living around gacha, and yet even he couldn't defend this monetization mechanic. Another opinion was not just from a content creator, but someone who has a child. Gotcha Smack is a content creator that makes content on HOYOVERSE games in general, and here's what he had to say. Here's my take. The average 35 plus parent in the world has no earthly clue what a gacha game even is. The games also hide their gacha in their descriptions. They don't even disclose a single loot box in any of their advertising, nor do they mention the price points. The typical mom or dad is going to examine that it's a 12 plus year old rating game, examine the description as well as the cartoon visuals and go, this seems fine. This is deceptive and intentional by the companies because they know parents have no earthly clue about mobile gaming because most parents don't play games period or understand the industry the way we do. The kid gets addicted and runs into the price points, and how that unfolds is absolutely due to a lack lack of supervision. Regardless, these companies need to disclose in their marketing and promotions that they are in fact gacha games that contain gambling elements, which falls on the lack of regulation from the government. Parents would see it in the description and say, "No shot, my kid is playing this, long overdue regulation needed." Now, someone did comment that the price points are actually there for the game. On the App Store, you can see how much all the bundles cost. But if we're going to be objective here, every single mobile game at this point has the same exact price points for packs, with the highest one always being $100. So it's not really enough for a parent to understand that there's gambling here. This had become a very heated topic for a while in between content creators and gacha game players. In the end though, HOYOVERSE themselves came out with a statement regarding the FTC's lawsuit. They said, Cognosphere, the distributor of Genshin Impact, has reached a settlement agreement with the United States Federal Trade Commission to strengthen and increase transparency around our parental consent and virtual currency practices. A statement from Cognosphere is below. Animation-style games and shows are well received by global audiences and players across various ages. Genshin Impact is a popular free-to-play anime-style game designed for older teens and adults. While we believe many of the FTC's allegations are inaccurate, we agreed to the settlement because we value the trust of our community and share a commitment to transparency for our players. Under the agreement, we will introduce a new age gate and parental consent protections for children and young teens and increase our in-game disclosures around virtual currency and rewards for players in the US in the coming months. So in other words, the FTC's lawsuit's bullshit, but hey, listen, we can't be bothered to countersue. Take your $20 million, we'll make that back in a day. And yeah, I guess we'll change some things around in the game. Okay, this is as straightforward as it gets, guys. $20 million for them is child's play. But this hasn't stopped people from comparing HOYOVERSE'S game mechanics to other games that are operating with no issues. For example, look at the odds that EA games give you for FIFA packs. When you open a premium gold pack, they say that it's a 4.2% chance to get a player gold 84 plus or higher in terms of stats. But what if I wanted a player that's like 94 or 96? What are the odds there? We don't know. Let's not forget that even Apex Legends, I know it's a dead game, still has loot boxes as well. And let's not pretend here that children don't use these, and let's not pretend that EA Games actually seeks parental consent. This is why many people have shared the opinion that the US government is actually using COPPA, weaponizing it in order to go after companies they don't like, most notably Chinese companies like TikTok and HOYOVERSE. But how will this affect Genshin Impact and other HOYOVERSE games? Well, as a start, you're probably going to have an option to immediately buy Fates instead of Genesis Crystals, to then convert them to Primogems, and then buy Fates with them. There's probably going to be an option that's like, yo, buy 20 pulls for this much, buy 30 pulls for this much, among other little changes. So in some ways, yes, this only serves to benefit the consumer. The consumer is not losing anything here. But the question is this, now that we know that the FTC has been working on this complaint for years, who else are they targeting? There are other gacha games out there that compete with Genshin Impact directly, like Wuthering Waves. It's also a Chinese game, but a $20 million fine will severely impact their cash flow. It won't just be a walk in the park like HOYOVERSE. So will this stop here, or will it get worse? That's the question on everyone's minds. Look, one thing is for certain in the end, gacha loves American money. But let's see how far they'll comply with this. And let's see if the FTC will seek to go after other, more predatory video game companies in the future. For now though, that's pretty much it. If you watched till the end, I love you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video whenever that is. Mwah.